Hello and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host Greg Payne coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Our good friends over at More Than Grand have put together a great 12-page PDF guide that can really help grandparents smooth out a lot of the stress when it comes to holiday planning. I mean, there's lots and lots to consider. There's feelings, there's a bunch of work stress towards the end of the year. Maybe you're trying to make budget numbers, maybe you're trying to make all sorts of things happen at work. And a lot of times we can get caught up in these emotions as well as just inadvertently, stepping on some toes. But More Than Grand has really put together an awesome PDF that has been worked on and developed with the help of parents so that grandparents can sit down and really kind of make sure that this holiday season runs as smooth as possible, whether you're visiting people in person or maybe you have family coming to you and you've got to baby-proof the house. You need to make sure that you are doing everything that you can to help the holiday season go well. Now, More Than Grand has this great 12-page PDF located on their website, and you can get to it by going to the affiliate link at cool-grandpa.us. Click on that affiliate link, and it's going to take you right over to More Than Grand, where you can purchase this 12-page PDF guide that can really make sure that you've got the best chance for an awesome family holiday experience. Now, normally this is going to be our chance to have a one-on-one conversation, and we're going to have that, but I wanted to also include a great memory that has been shared by my wife, Karen Mangum, and she's going to be joining us shortly to really talk to us about what traditions and rituals and memories that she has around her holiday seasons that she spent in Los Angeles with her grandparents that lived close by, as well as grandparents that lived far away. So you're going to enjoy hearing this conversation. Before we jump into that conversation, though, I did want to remind you that last month we did talk about goal setting, and we did talk about trying to get to that early this year to make sure that you've got the best chance to get your mind right and get everything lined up so that you can really hit 2024 at a full rate of steam. Now, one of the things I just want to remind you about is really to be focused in on just making a few goals that are going to be meaningful to you. Make sure that you have a great idea about why you want to accomplish that goal, and then make sure that you've also got steps laid out on how you're going to achieve that goal. A lot of times we plan big goals, and we don't often think about all those small steps that we need to take to get to that goal. Above all else, remember, set goals that are going to challenge you. Set goals that are going to stretch you. Maybe you're going to want to try to lose 50, 60 pounds, and maybe you only end up losing 30 or 40 pounds next year. That's okay. That's not failure. That is progress towards your goal. So remember, set big goals, do them early this year, and make sure that you've got all those steps lined up so that you can reach and achieve your goals and certainly be moving towards that accomplishment. This month's conversation is really going to be focused in on the importance of traditions and rituals. Now, for me, separating out and what's the difference between a tradition and a ritual, tradition is, for me, more the experience of what's going on. And then the ritual is how you create that experience. So, for example, a tradition may be that everybody comes over to the house for Thanksgiving because you've just got the space, you've got the kitchen, you can do it, you've got the setup, whatever it is, people come to your place for Thanksgiving. Now, part of the rituals for that big Thanksgiving meal might be preparing a special dish. You're going to hear my wife Karen talk about her grandmother always bringing over a big thing of yams, and they always get burned. The other part to those rituals are going to be just how the seating goes, who's saying a blessing on the food, what kind of activities the family's doing around there. And these are the actions that go into the tradition. So if you think about it, remember, traditions are the big overall experience, and then it's the little rituals that make up that overall experience of the tradition. So without further ado, let's jump in and listen to my wife, Karen, talk about her fond memories of the traditions and the rituals that she had as a young woman growing up in Los Angeles. Hi, Karen. Welcome into the Cool Grandpa podcast. I know this is not exactly the huge surprise or welcome, seeing how most of the time you're downstairs when I'm doing this, but thank you so much for being on here and coming on to talk to us about traditions.
Well, thank you. It's probably a huge surprise for all your listeners finding out that, hey, I exist.
Yeah, you're not just a virtual wife that I've made up with virtual children. You're actually real. So to many people, that's going to be a surprise. But for a few folks that know us, they definitely know you.
Yeah, so we've been married 28 years now, and we have 2 boys, if he's never said, and 3.5 grandkids. So.
If I've never said, I've talked about the kids before. I've brought them up, and I've brought you up before, but a lot of people may not really know you very well. I've kept things pretty high level. So why don't you give us an introduction, and then we're going to get started talking about your memories and the importance of traditions, especially around this time of year.
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, in a town called Sylmar. Moved to Washington, where I met you after my divorce, and you married me and my 2 boys. At the time, the oldest was just barely turned 5, and the youngest was about to be 18 months old when we got married. Moved back and forth across the country with you several times until we landed here in Georgia, just north of Atlanta, about 17 years ago. And you were the one that got me going to Georgia Tech. And now I'm an architect and work 5 miles from home, which is wonderful.
Definitely being from Georgia Tech, I think it's safe to say we're both rambling wrecks, but you're the smarter of the 2 for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Now, this time of year, I like to put out an episode that deals with the importance or the influence of rituals and traditions, because I think so many of us, don't have those, or maybe they're not as strong as what they used to be. But traditions, I think, really help to bind generations together, as well as being able to communicate kind of the shared values of families, of communities even. And, you want to take it to like the 4th of July, let's say, nations really kind of come together around some of the traditions and rituals. And so what I'd love for you to do is talk to us a little bit about the traditions that you had around the holidays. And since we're so close to Thanksgiving now, why don't you start out with talking to us a little bit about Thanksgiving, and then let's roll into like Christmas and some of the other holidays.
Well, Thanksgiving was usually always spent at my mom's parents' place, and she was the middle of 5 children. So they would bring in, and there was always, competing on who could have more kids. So there was quite a few of us cousins in the house, and even with over 30 some odd people, the house was still pretty quiet. We were usually a pretty quiet family. But they would come down and visit, and we lived maybe 5 miles from my grandparents. So they were pretty close. One of the things we would do after the parade on Thanksgiving, it was Twilight Zone was on TV all day. And then we had our annual football game, and everyone went out. Well, all the kids and all the uncles went out to play football, and everybody could join in. And it was less organized football, more that team against the other team and get the ball past that tree. A lot of just kind of hanging out as a family and talking and catching up, which was the biggest thing I think that I really got from that, and how much family is important and how close family could be. That, and Grandma always burns the yams, but everyone was okay with it. We all expected every year she's going to burn the yams, but nobody liked yams anyway, so it was okay. So, but my dad's parents, we spent Christmas with them. Usually it was Christmas Eve, and we got to open presents with them, and then Grandpa would always tell stories. Well, we called him Grampy. So we had our Grandpa and then Grampy. And, oh, could he tell stories? And he would make up words in the stories. I can't even remember now, but they were hysterical. And so now my dad would do it when we were little. He would tell stories the same way.
So let me jump in and ask you. So let's differentiate kind of your grandpa and Grampy. Where was Grandpa living, and then where was Grampy? And go ahead and introduce them by name and of course with your grandmas and all that. Give us a little bit of background on who they were.
Okay. Grandpa and Grandma were Kenneth and Winifred Clark, and they were my mom's parents. They lived in Sylmar with us. Grandpa was one of the first robotics engineers by trade. He never did get a degree in it, but he only went through school to 8th grade, but could do calculus in his head. So one of those types. And then, of course, being that age group, Grandma was stay at home, and she also never learned to drive, which I kind of found amazing. But she was the type that she could bring dead plants to life just by walking by them. And then we had Grandpa, or Grampy, which was my dad's father, and that was Odell Mangum, and his wife Doris, and that was his second wife, but that was Grandma Doris, and we just adored her. And they were together since before we were born, and they lived out in Salt Lake, Utah. Grampy used to be a coal miner, but he was retired due to a broken back. And then we had, every year we would see them at least once a year. And one time I even remember driving all the way out from Los Angeles to Salt Lake, which is a really long drive, in a VW bus with 5 kids and no air conditioning during summer.
And you guys weren't even a bunch of smelly hippies on the way to Woodstock. You're just a bunch of smelly kids in the back of a VW bus, huh?
That's right. It was a VW bus because that's all that could fit all 5 of us. And later, all 6 of us.
Oh, sure. Now, tell me a little bit about when this is the first part of November when this is coming out. So decorations are starting to come out. The Halloween stuff is starting to go away. What were some of the indicators that Thanksgiving was starting to become, that it was on the horizon for the family and for the football games and for the family events?
There wasn't a whole lot of indicators in Los Angeles because it was still warm. In fact, it was warm all the way through Christmas. So in that area, there definitely was not any type of weather or anything to tell you. It was mostly everyone preparing for Thanksgiving break at school and making plans for our cousins to come down and stay. And because there were so many, not all of them could stay with my grandparents, and who was going to be there and where we would have some of our cousins staying with us, and some of the girls would stay with me, and just kind of that type of thing.
So did your mom start to pull stuff out as far as big cooking pans and big things like that to get them cleaned up and get stuff ready?
It was her pie dishes. She did a lot with the pie dishes. Most of the cooking was done at my grandmother's house, but she did award-winning pies, and to the point that all the church functions, she was not allowed to compete anymore in the pie contest. And that's, she made her crust from scratch and the filling from scratch, and they were wonderful. And then she taught me everything, to the point when I was 16, I competed in the pie contest, and they reminded her that she had been banned. And I had to let them know, nope, that was my pie. So it wasn't shortly after that I was banned from the contest too.
So how did things start to come together, and what were some of the traditions that were going on Thanksgiving? Because you talked about the football game outside, and that was probably when everybody showed up and was killing time before the meals. But was there anything else going on at Thanksgiving where it's like, okay, this is going to happen, and these people are going to do this, and these people are going to do that?
Well, everybody helped out with the cooking, and except for the yams. But one of the biggest things was the setting of the table. Because there were so many, we had tables set up in 2 different rooms. It was usually in the dining room and then in the living room, and the kids all ate in the living room. And one of the things, when you turned 13, you became what we would call a la-di-da, because the first time the oldest grandkid turned 13, they all kind of made fun of her and say, well, la-di-da, aren't you grown up now? But at that point, she was able to sit up at the grown-ups table. And slowly, as each kid turned 13, they got to sit up at the grown-ups table until there was no room anymore. And then there were so many teenagers, it became 3 sets of tables. One for the adults, one for the teenagers, because they didn't want to sit with the adults anymore. It was no fun. And then one for the little kids. So, so it was graduating from table to table as growing up was kind of a passage.
Yeah. So what were, in just staying on Thanksgiving, what were some of the real traditions and some of the real rituals? And you've talked about these, but what were some of those things that you still remember, and that when they come up, whether it's our Thanksgivings or going over to friends for theirs, whatever it is that really strikes a memory with you?
I think one of the biggest is going around the table and one by one telling what we're grateful for has been one of the biggest. And the family prayer, the patriarch always giving the blessing over the food before we ate. And it was everyone was extremely quiet and just very respectful and observant. And of course, then the pressure was on, what was he going to say this year? And it was kind of like a small speech, that prayer. And then we'd filter back to the tables because, of course, we'd have to all cram ourselves in one tiny little dining room, and it was everyone's nose to back trying to get into one room. But that's been the biggest thing for me, is just getting to spend time with family, getting just to talk and joke around is a big thing.
Now, growing up in LA, what were some of the things that started to become traditions and started to be some of the rituals that you had for moving over to Christmas and then even New Year's?
Let's see. During Christmas, then the lights and the decorations would come out. You get the decorated palm trees, because of course we had tons of palm trees. And if we wanted snowmen, people would gather tumbleweeds and tie them together in graduating sizes and make snowmen and spray paint the tumbleweeds white. And those were our dry snowmen for Los Angeles. And there was a lot of decorating of palm trees and flocked Christmas trees, which I could never understand why they would be white. But the stores, we had our annual where the whole school comes and puts on a Christmas program. And about half of it was in Spanish. So we got to learn another language. I remember learning how Mexico would celebrate Christmas. I can't remember a lot now, but because 90% of the town that we were in, everyone was from Mexico. We did get to learn a lot about that. We had a lot of pool parties for Christmas, and yeah.
Talk to me about what like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day was with your house and what was going on, what was happening there, what were some of the things that this is what Grampy would do, and this is what your dad would do, this is what your mom was doing, this is what the family was doing together.
Again, it was a lot of everybody helping out. We would get mom's pie or my pie together, and we would take it over to my aunt's house because that's where my dad's parents would stay. His dad and his stepmom would stay with his sister, his stepsister, and we would always go over there for dinner. And the kids were always in charge of setting up the dinner table, and we would just sit around, and Grandpa would usually tell tales, and Grandma Doris would just get so frustrated with him because he would make up words and not tell stories correctly. Like he would throw digital watches in with something about St. Nicholas. It's like, well, honey, there's no digital watches on Santa Claus. But that's what my dad and my grandfather would do, is they'd throw stuff in like that. Again, a lot of sitting around and just catching up and getting to know each other, and a lot of talking at that point. And an opening present. But that was always very secondhand to us. It was more important to visit and just be around family at that point. Even as young kids, the presents weren't the big focus. And then Christmas morning, or I should say Christmas afternoon, was spent with my mom's parents. And it would be either they would come to our place or we would stop by their place for, a couple hours and visit and see what's going on.
Now, you do have a funny story about you and your brothers getting coal for Christmas. So, before we move off of this thing with traditions, I want you to tell us a little bit about that Christmas where you guys got coal.
Well, this was one year when over half of the grandkids were teenagers at this point. And you know how fun teenagers can be. So my mom came up with this idea that all the teenagers were going, and she had made stockings, bought real coal, and we had olive trees that were in our yard. So there would always be these saplings that grew from the bottom of it, and she cut down all these switches and mailed them off to our aunts. Enough for each teenager to have one. And Christmas morning, we all woke up with no presents and just coal and a switch. Well, some of my cousins were crying. My brothers and I, however, immediately went outside and tried to light the coal on fire, thinking, okay, this is cool. We've got the switch that, there's our kindling. Can we get the coal burning? And some of our cousins did the exact same thing. And they were our mom and our aunts were so frustrated that we had fun with the coal and switch that they finally had to give in and bring out the presents. And okay, no, you guys really do have presents.
So what are some of the other traditions that you guys had around, whether it's holidays or birthdays, and what are some of the rituals that you might have had around those?
Let's see. I think the only other one that I can really think of is Sundays. We were extremely poor growing up. So we never had sweetened cereal. We didn't get the Tostios. We always did get Cheerios. But everything else was store brand or homemade. But every Sunday morning, we got one box of sweetened cereal. And so we always looked forward to Sunday morning. And okay, after church, we get to eat sweetened cereal. And so that was it. I think it helped Mom get us up and ready and behave at church so that we could get home and have our sweetened cereal. But it was a tradition every year. And so I tried to do that with our kids growing up, only it was cinnamon rolls. So for years, I would do cinnamon rolls on Sunday morning.
So thinking back over all this and talking about it for 20 some odd minutes here, what are some of the lasting impressions? What are some of the memories? What comes up when you're thinking about traditions and some of the rituals around the holidays, and what that means to you now that you're in your years old?
It just really reinforced the importance of family, both your nuclear family and your extended family, and how much they mean to you, that they're always a part of your life, even though you only see them once a year, because our extended family lives so far away. We only got to see them once a year, except for my grandparents. They lived close, but everybody else lived either at least 3 hours away up to 10 hours away. So, yeah, it was that. Just the importance of family and that how close we all were.
Okay. And what kind of advice or what would you be telling moms and dads and grandpas and grandmas out there about, if they don't really have any strong traditions or rituals around holidays or family gatherings? What would you say to them about maybe finding one or two that they could start to put in?
Yeah, that it can be something simple as cinnamon rolls. Doing a cinnamon roll just once a week, and that's, something special that you don't get to do any of the other time. But also to reach out to any extended family, or if you have, because we had another family that were best friends with my mom and dad. Now, they weren't family by blood, but in our hearts, it was our aunt and uncle, Aunt Christy and Uncle Dave. So, I mean, they were family. So you can bring extremely close friends in and just let them know, you guys are family, and stressing how important family is.
Well, that's great advice. And these were some fun stories to be sharing with us. And so, Karen, thanks for sitting down and spending 20 minutes and talking to us about your experience with traditions and with rituals and what they mean to you, both at the time they were going on as well as, many years later. So I really appreciate you doing this and sitting down with me.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciated Karen coming on, talking to us about her memories of those rich rituals and traditions that she had with her families. As you can tell, there wasn't a whole lot involved in that, but the memories that she has have been lasting her a long, long time. So sometimes if you're a grandparent, you might think that just showing up is enough and just enjoying the kids and what's going on is enough. And yeah, that's true to a point. But I think too, if you can find a way to make sure that you're helping to create or even perpetuate traditions in your families, that can really be something that creates that lasting memory. And don't worry if things go awry. They sometimes do, but those are also the rich memories as well. I mean, think back on your own experiences. One of the big experiences and memories that I'm sure you have is when something went completely wrong. The turkey got burnt. Something happened, a window got broken on Christmas with a soccer ball going through a window or something like that. And those are the experiences and those are the things that last and create those memories that we're very fond of. Maybe not always real fond of at the time, but it is something that builds up a memory and it builds up a shared family experience. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation about rituals and traditions, and I hope that you are working to continue to perpetuate traditions and rituals in your family. And if you don't have a lot, go ahead and start one. It's never too late to start to do things and start to build those memories with your kids and your grandkids. Till next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.